शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यश्छन्दसा वृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् संबभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया आस्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवं ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिवा कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिवा ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणगुं सवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इतीर्थशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्म एधि वेदस्य म आनीस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधितेन अहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं नो अपि वातयं मनः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तगुंह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तं तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यानस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततो मानतोऽस्मि। ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्भूतं यथा निद्रया यत्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। यस्यैव स्फुरणं सदात्मकम् असत्कल्पार्थकं भासते साक्षात् तत्त्वमसीति वेदवचसा यो बोधयत्याश्रितान् यत्साक्षात्करणाद् भवेन्न पुनरावृत्तिर्भवाम्भोनिधौ तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। नानाच्छिद्रघटोदरस्थितमहादीपप्रभाभास्वरं ज्ञानं यस्य तु चक्षुरादिकरणद्वारा बहिस्पन्दते जानामीति तमेव भान्तमनुभात्येतत्समस्तं जगत् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। देहं प्राणमपीन्द्रियानपि चलां बुद्धिं च शून्यं विदुः स्त्रीबालान्दचडोपमास्त्वमिति भ्रान्ताभृशं वादिनः मायाशक्तिविलासकल्पितमहाव्यामोहसंहारिणे तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। So in the Vedanta classes that Swami Dayananji will conduct for us, and Swami Chinmayananji also, all the acharyas, but Swami Dayanand was it was very characteristic of him. So he would begin a class by just silently looking at everybody in the classroom and really making eye contact with them. And he would spend like a minute or so doing so. He would just go back and forth like this, and then he will begin. And I miss that because when I was teaching classes, I used to do that, but in the online with this YouTube, I'm not able to do that. So I'm just imagining that you are watching me. So anyway, that's the only change in this new technology. But otherwise, I think I'm adjusting to it and able to communicate as best as I can to simulate it, because this thing should be done really in close contact with the students. But anyway, okay. So I believe last week we had talked about the three things that Vyasacharya ji had kept in mind when he composed the Brahma Sutras. So one was to consolidate the overall sense of what all the Upanishads are saying. And what they're saying is that, listen, you are severely mistaken. You should see that you always have been free. Even now you are free. And your freedom is not something which is acquired. Actually, what is acquired is a sense of, a notion of non-freedom. So that is acquired and then given up. Acquired, given up. At night time it's given up, in the morning it reacquires. But your status of freedom was not acquired. It is you. This is what all the Upanishads are saying. So it's interesting in some of the advanced books of Nididhyasanam, the one that we took recently, Swami Tattvavidananji took, and Swami Paramarthananda had sent out some tapes on it, and it's Ashtavakra Gita. So in the Ashtavakra Gita, it's a very important text really. Just a second. Why is this not recording? I thought I had put the battery in and everything, but something seems to be, I may have to get a new one. I don't know. We'll see. So what I wanted to say in terms of Vyasacharya ji's first point of really consolidating all the Vidya is what was pointed out in Ashtavakra Gita and other very advanced Nididhyasanam texts and so on. So it's interesting that in the Ashtavakra Gita, where this Rishi called Ashtavakra Rishi is teaching Janaka that, and in the entire text of Ashtavakra Gita, he never uses the word Brahman. He uses the word Brahman. Then what? He uses the word you or I. So this should be kept in mind, really speaking, that really, so, but you know, it's interesting, this is, when we think about Brahman, it is a strange word we have never heard before, Brahman. We've heard of tables and chairs and so on and so forth. But when this word Brahman is introduced to us, we don't know what to make out of it. So immediately, like anything else that is new to you, you have kind of a vague idea of what that is. And you're trying to understand what the teacher is saying about Brahman and so on and so forth. And then it takes a while for you to really see that what Brahman, the text is saying, is about you. So there is a lag of focusing on yourself after moving around. My image is that if you have an extremely sensitive telescope and you're looking at, let's say, a moon, how the moon moves around, because until you make it very steady and you tune it exactly right, you cannot see the steady moon. Or even a distant star is even better. And so it's there, but you're not quite sure of it. Similarly, the study of Brahman has that effect, that you're trying to figure out exactly what is being said. And then slowly it dawns on you, should dawn on you, I don't know if it does yet or not, that really what Brahman is being talked about is me. And this, by the way, goes to the several aspects of it. I'll give you another example, which is so-called Maya Shakti. So, just like Brahman, which is looked at vaguely as something other than yourself, Maya Shakti also, when the subject is introduced, is looked upon as something which is external to you. There's a Maya Shakti who's playing tricks on you. This is how it is introduced initially, isn't it? And so in the advanced, and so really speaking, this is all done initially because it is difficult for a mind to grasp that really I am being talked about. We don't accept it. Oh, me, I'm just a simple person, well, there's nothing much to talk about. Tell me about Brahman and Ishvara and Maya. I am very curious to know all of that. So the Shruti obliges you, saying, okay, this fellow is not quite ready yet. But so let's go step by step. So you talk about Brahman and Maya. So let's go back to the Maya Shakti. This is an interesting thing to see. I mean, it took me a while to also grasp all of this. So the Maya Shakti initially is looked upon as something external to you, which has some effect on you, and so on and so forth. But you know what the real reality of it is? The Maya Shakti is my Shakti, which makes me confused. So yeah, there is a samashti Maya, no doubt about it. There is always a samashti and vyashti. There is a macrocosmic and a microcosmic. So it's not as though the macrocosmic Maya is not there. But the macrocosmic Maya now has to be has to be owned up. And so you cannot keep on blaming, I'm trying to study and I'm not able to really make a lot of progress. I know this is true, but etc., etc. The normal stuff that we go through. And in the meantime, you kind of like, I wouldn't say blame, but you put the reasoning behind some external Maya. And all the Nididhyasanam texts and so on say it's not external. Ishvara has kind of outsourced the Maya to you as your own ignorance. And not only ignorance, but a sense of confusion, a sense of So exactly right. We are wedded to the fact that I am just a jiva. And no matter what the text says and so on, the background shruti that I'm just a jiva, I'm just a jiva, I'm just a human being, I'm coping up with life, so on and so forth, this is not removed, not attacked at all. And that is really what needs to be attacked. Why do you think you are a jiva when I'm telling you you are not? Oh, well, I don't know, that's my experience. Yeah, it is your experience, but then look through it. Don't you see this is a confusion on your part? So the upshot of all this is, what I'm saying is, and I'm really strange that I'm talking about this in the start of the Brahma Sutra, but I just wanted to give you the view of this, that eventually what has to happen is I have to, and this is what we talked about, this is what is called Ishvara Kripa, then Shastra Kripa, then Guru Kripa, and then Atma Kripa. So Atma here means your own mind, your own thinking. So what has to happen is that you have to own it. You have to own it, because the Shastra is saying, listen, you are Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. And the confusion is not anybody else's, it is your confusion. Look through it. Work through it. Conquer it. And so this is the central theme of all of the Upanishads. But in the beginning, the word Brahman is used so that you look at it as a paroksha vastu and then slowly come up to the aparoksha vastu. Anyway, so this is just on the side, but that's the first task of Acharya Sutratma, Badarayana, Vyasacharya, that's what I meant to say. This is the first task. And then the second task, as we know, was a lot of these schools of thought, which are called darshanas, who say, no, this is wrong. Your understanding is not correct, and here's how it is now not correct. So the acharyas, our acharyas say, you better understand all the doubts, because those doubts are your own doubts amplified and structured. So there are a lot of very smart people, very intelligent people, who can actually articulate the doubts better than you can. So please understand their doubts very well, because they reflect your own doubts of the Acharya, that what are these people saying about us? And is there some validity in their arguments, in their objections? This is the second one. And I'll actually come to that in a minute. Then the third one is, by the way, so the second one was a defense, that you have a goalpost and you just do not want anybody to come in and score against you. Score against you means that it changes your viewpoint. So you were out to understand Vedanta, and in the meantime you got sidelined by following some erroneous conclusion, and you adopt it. You adopt the erroneous conclusion and said, this is better. This is better. And so this is called scoring a goal by the opposition. And how does this thing happen? Now we will talk a lot about this. The way it happens is that the understanding of Vedanta requires a lot of patience. Lot of patience it requires. And it's a slow revelation. And we are all by nature impatient. This is how we are born. We want to get things done now. We cannot wait forever. So if someone comes up with some kind of a promise, even though I'm not sure that it is defective, but it sounds good, then I'm looking into it. I think I may have told some of you in the classes earlier that when I came back from the PhD 2.5 year course with Swami Dayanand Ji, so one of my wife's uncles was visiting her father. Her father was alive at that time, my wife's father, and he was living close by. So his cousin from India had come to visit for a while. And so he found out that myself and my wife and our 2 kids had spent 2.5 years in the ashram. And I still remember the conversation that happened, and this is must be around 1982. And he was saying, yeah, you were gone for that long? And you gave up your job? Why? So I said, I've met some Mahatmas and they really deeply inspired me, and I really wanted to study and this, that, or the other. He says, but these were the old days when things were not very well structured. Then he started to tell me about Maharishis, what is it called? Mahesh Yogis. Now I forget even the name of it. This is when, not having you in front of me, you will immediately say, how come this guy forgets? This is very easy. TM, Transcendental Meditation. So he was a great devotee of Transcendental Meditation, TM. So after he criticized me for wasting 2.5 years of my life away from the normal activity and so on, he proceeded to tell me that now the modern method is very simple. All these studying of Gita and Upanishads and Sanskrit, and this is old days. Think about it, these are new days now. And this is so, I was just looking at it. I had already studied a lot about TM, Maharshi Yogi and so on, but in deference to this old person at that time, I was much younger at that time, I just kept quiet. I said, oh really, wonderful, wonderful, good. He says, just do TM and you will get there a lot faster. This is the new rage. Why don't you understand it? So here, this is exactly what it is, that you are by nature impatient, and if somebody comes along and says, this is the way it should be done. And so these days exactly the art of living is something like that. That really you just sit there and you do some pranayama and so on, and the self can be experienced right away. And yeah, you can supplement it by reading some other things, but this is the main thing. So our sense of experience really belies us. We want the experience, just the calmness of doing that. Sorry, I'm just going around. I haven't even started Brahma Sutra yet. And I must tell you, this is one thing I decided to do, is that if I take Brahma Sutra in its most analytical way, many of you may not find it very interesting and you may run away. And so what I propose to do, this is what my decision is that given the understanding of what I think, who you are and so on, I'm going to mix some some discussion about the background and the knowledge itself, and perhaps I will take some detour on some ideas, all the way to mix in with the analytical nature of Brahma Sutra. So for instance, I propose to, I think I've already told you this, that as far as the Dakshinamurti Stotram goes, I may interrupt the main flow of the Brahma Sutra by spending some time on each one of the 10 Dakshinamurti Stotrams, and even do some meditation on them. And so this is what I will propose to do as we go forward. And I hope you're okay with it. You really have no choice. This is what my mind tells me that I should be doing. And I hope this is useful to you. And I think it will be, because you will find it a little less analytically dry. And Swami Paramarthananda also had said that in terms of the qualification for study, he says there's going to be a lot of logical hair-splitting analysis, and so I hope that you're prepared for it and so on. I will correct it to a certain extent by giving you some background information on these kinds of things. So anyway, this is how it's going to proceed. Okay. So now let us go to what we had started to talk about last week, which is, if you remember, was the elements of Shabda Jnanam. Shabda Jnanam. Shabda Jnanam means that there is a recognition of valid knowledge by the words of a trustful person. Oh, the example I gave was, I don't know how I came up with that, the Vice President of Belgium visiting you, and it's not as though you didn't have the experience of him. You might have actually, when he first came in, you shook his hands and you said he's some friend of a friend who's coming, and welcome, please have let me fix you some hors d'oeuvres and drinks and so on. And like other people, you just look upon him as just another nice guest. But then at the right occasion, if your friend says, by the way, I didn't tell you that initially, but let me introduce you to this very important person who is a childhood friend of mine, and he has become the Vice President of Belgium and may become the President of Belgium. And now all of that, the recognition changes completely. Why? Because it is Shabda Jnanam. It is something that your friend had truthfully stated, not truthfully stated, and your friend, you know, is a trustworthy person. Because there could be other friends who are playing a practical joke on you. And if you know such a person, you kind of look at it and says, what? Don't tell me this. But here, if this person with the right expression and so on and says, by the way, I want to introduce you to this person. He's not just another person. He has accomplished a lot, and he is now become a very important person in the whole country of Belgium. And he's a childhood friend who was visiting, and I thought I'd bring him. Done. You don't have any doubts anymore. Okay. So with respect to that, the next topic I want to talk about is, the various people who attack you. So the number 2 objective of the Acharya, Vyasacharya, which is to defend at first against the onslaught of other people. Like, for example, my wife's uncle, who's saying TM is the way to go. Don't do anything else. Experience is the most important one. And you can just gain the experience. And so this is what happens, I tell you, that I'll just give you another example. which I was going to give until I got interrupted. So let me complete that. So long time ago, I won't really mention the exact relationship, but a close relationship of my wife approached me and said that my child is on the verge of changing into Christianity, and we are both Hindus and we don't like it, and he or she is not listening to us, and can you please talk to her? Let's say it was a she, I might as well admit it. So can you please talk to her? So I got her to come here and stay with me for 1 week, and we talked a lot about Vedanta and this, that or the other. But in and through that, I could tell that she's not really ready to change her view. And there really were 2 reasons I found out later on. Okay? One is that she actually fell in love with a boy, a Christian boy, a wonderful boy. Since then, by the way, they've gotten married, and both she and her husband and their children have become Christians. Great people. Just I couldn't be happier with everybody there. So absolutely no regrets of that at all. People are people. Doesn't matter what. But anyway, so the reason why she chose that, there were 2 reasons. One is that she fell in love with this boy. The second reason, and that's the reason I want to talk about, is she enjoyed the calmness and meditative atmosphere in churches. So, opposed to our temples and Indian temples and so on, which is a cacophony of noises, and things are really helter-skelter, and people are not clean, areas are not clean, so on. You know what it is. I'm not going to go on and on. Compared to that, churches are quiet, and there is organ music, and the ceilings are extremely high. Extremely high. Higher the better. I really enjoy when my wife and I would visit Europe, usually as part of my work. So after work I would go and visit France or Italy and Germany and so on. And my favorite part of that was visiting churches and looking at their beautiful architecture and so on. And it is really inspiring. And the moment you enter the coolness of the church, especially if there is music playing and so on, you know what it does to you? It gives you the experience of Atma. Because your mind is no longer searching, not going. You're just, and you feel this is wonderful. And on top of that, if it is said, please accept Christ and so on and so forth, then you are liable to do so. So really all this diatribe that I had was all to show that we are impatient. Vedanta teaches 1 step at a time. Eventually you reach not only the same place, you go much beyond it. Because the quietude and the silence and the beauty of the Atma is shown to be yourself. It is not an experience. So there's no comparison. Going to a church is an experience, because when you come out, you're out in the blaring of horns and all sort of again. So you want to go back. Here there is no going back. It is you. But to show that, it requires an entire infrastructure of saying, here's what it is, and as we will see. So anyway, all we were saying is, all I'm spending all this much time was just to show that we are experience seekers. We don't, we look upon knowledge as something interesting, but really has not given me the experience. It will. But no, I don't want to wait. I want it now. Anyway, so back to Shabda Jnanam. So what I thought I would do is to give you a very brief introduction to how we gain jnanam, how we gain knowledge. And I think you pretty much know all of this, but in the context of how we were going to teach, this slight background is important. So let's look at that. So this is what is called pramanam. So pramanam means the means of gaining valid knowledge. Valid knowledge is called prama. So there is also, when we say valid knowledge, which is a prefix to knowledge, we should understand what is knowledge. So knowledge is that you think of something as being true. Okay? Think of it, something is true. In fact, let me do this. I meant to do this, but I forgot to bring it here. So I'm going to disappear for about half a minute. I'll be right back. I just wanted to give an example of this roof. You want something? I'll explain later. Okay, I'm back. Now, knowledge means that you see something as being valid. So, I went to the fruit basket in the family room, and my wife had bought this fig, black fig. There's also some green figs. So, when I look at it, I see this as a fig. This is called knowledge. But what happened is that if you take a look at this fig and you touch it, it turns out this is not a real fig. This is a stone fig. So I actually I lied to you. I didn't go to the fruit basket. I went to the decorative basket. And my wife has this wonderful collection of fruits that can fool anybody. These are all like very expensive artifacts. And so this is not knowledge, but if you touch it or even smell it, it doesn't smell like a fig. It doesn't, then finally when you touch it, you say, oh, this is a heavy stone fig. This becomes what is called Brahma, or valid knowledge. So the valid knowledge means that you don't have any doubt anymore, and it is for a fact, it has been verified. This is called Brahma. And the source of generating the valid knowledge is called Pramanam. Pramajanakam iti pramanam. This is called pramanam. So let us look at what are the accepted sources of pramanams. So there are 6 of them, and I think you pretty much know this, and I won't spend a lot of time, but just to tell you what they are. So the most important one, pramanam, is our sensory knowledge. Our senses are very trustworthy. Eyes, subject to verification. So here it's very possible that the fig that we saw was not real, it is artificial. So some verification has to be done, but really otherwise the eyes don't lie. When the eye looked at it and he says, this is a fig. Yeah. So the eyes never plays tricks on you. Similarly, all these sense organs that you have, they are very loyal and very truthful to you. So the knowledge based on senses is called pratyaksha. Aksha prati vartate, aksham prati vartate. Aksham means eyes. Here eyes means just an example, upalakshana. You also have other sense organs. And organs of actions, all of those. So the entire set of 10 organs that you have, each one of us has, the knowledge based on that is called pratyaksha, right? Okay. Then, and the pratyaksha is the basis of all knowledges. This is where it all starts. So the next one is anumanam, or inference. So for instance, that supposing you had a cake that you had brought and you were going to have it after lunch or dinner or something, and you were on the telephone call. When you came back, one of the pieces of the cake is missing. Okay? And there's only 2 of you in the home, either you or your spouse. And it was full about an hour ago, and now it has been cut into, a slice of the cake has been cut. What would you do? You did not see your spouse eat it, but some person must have eaten it, and it is likely to be you're not likely, it is going to be your spouse because nobody else came in. So then you can walk up to your spouse and say, aha, how was the cake? Now, you didn't see the cake being eaten or cut, but you can infer that it is as good as, because the cake cannot cut itself. Some conscious person has to cut it. So this is called anumanam. And a portion of the anumanam is the third, a kind of a, not portion, but a type of anumanam is the third one, which is called anupalabdhi. Anupalabdhi means the knowledge of absence of something which is not there. So we can extend that logic to say that suppose you brought some I think a cake would be too much, but let's say you brought a piece of chocolate, small piece of chocolate, and it was there on the counter an hour ago, and now the whole thing is completely gone. Now, so you now have knowledge of the chocolate being gone. So for this you must know that the chocolate was there and now it is completely gone. So you now know that the chocolate is not there. This is called anupalabdhi. Then the next one is upamanam. Upamanam means a comparison. So here, for example, the comparison might be that you're looking for cars, you're shopping for cars, and someone says Honda has introduced a new SUV, and it's a compact SUV. Go take a look at it. So you say, really, what does it look like? So he says, I'll tell you what. I have a Toyota SUV. You see this one? This is the one and Honda has a version of that. It looks similar to it. It's the similar size, and if you see it, you will see this is the one it is. So now you are not looking for a big car, you're not looking for a sedan, you're not looking for a pickup truck, you're looking for an SUV about the same size. And if you go to the Honda dealer and there is a car like that, you say, yes, this is what my friend was telling me about. So this is what is called Upama. Upamanam, sorry, not Upama, Upamanam. Upma is a dish. Upamanam. Number 4. Number 5 is what is called Arthapatti. Arthapatti is a bit more difficult to understand, but not that many examples, but it is there. In fact, it is a very important one. It's a very important one. So the Vedanta relies on Arthapatti a lot. So here's what it is. And I think here Swami Paramarthanandaji's example was very good. In fact, he gave this as part of Brahma Sutra itself. So he says in Arthapatti what happens is, and I think it's quite valid these days in California, because during the day it could be very sunny and dry. Everything is all dry and so on. So supposing you got up in the car in the morning and you started driving, and the moment you start driving you see puddles on the road. Your own driveway is very dry, but as you're going through some shaded areas of the road, you find there's puddles all over. What would you conclude? You would conclude there was a big downpour in the middle of the night when you were asleep, isn't it? There is no other explanation for it. It is called a multi-level inference. So Arthapatti is a multi-level inference. And so this is the kind of example that you have. So this is called Arthapatti. So 5, Pratyaksha, Anumanam, Anupalabdhi, Upamanam, Arthapatti. Number 6 is Shabda Jnana. Shabda Jnana, which we already know. Alright, so these are the 6 sources of valid knowledge. Valid knowledge means one where you don't have any doubts anymore. Like now I have no doubts that this is in fact a stone fruit. It is not a real fruit. It looks like it's nice to fool and so on. This is what it is. It's called valid knowledge, no doubt about it. So now we can go to the next step, which is all the people who do not accept Vedanta as a valid knowledge. They don't accept, I should restate it, they do not accept Vedanta as a valid source of knowledge, a source of valid knowledge. That's the best way to put it. They don't think of Vedanta as a pramanam. They don't look at Vedas as a pramanam. And so, in a kind of a summary fashion, the people who do not accept Vedanta, and especially Vedas, and especially Vedanta as valid knowledge, they are classified into 12 darshanas. So let's just look at them very briefly as to who they are. And so this will form as a background when the Brahma Sutra is being discussed as to what do they think about it. And again, this is to characterize your own doubts that you have. And so when my uncle's TM person came in, and so everybody has a feeling that maybe this is not a bad idea. If you can gain freedom from worry by meditation on TM, maybe this is the way to go. So this is an amplification of our own doubts, really. But here what they are. So out of this is what is called darshana. So darshana here means a viewpoint. I think I already mentioned that in the last couple of classes. So there are 12 darshanas that are taken up. And these are the old style darshanas. Now there is a variation of these darshanas that can still be classified into these. So like for example, Islam or Christianity, Judaism. So these are all darshanas. They are all religious thinking. So they can all be fitted into these 12, as hopefully we will do at some point in time. Not right away, but I think I might attempt to do that. But for the time being, here are the basic 12 darshanas that the Brahma Sutra deals with. Number 1 is called Charvaka. So Charu Vakyasya is called Charvaka, means whose speech is very pleasant. So the Charvakaha are the majority of the people on this earth. They're called Charvaka. And how are they Charvakaha? They say, just enjoy life. Don't worry about Brahman and heaven going to... Who has gone to... Has anybody given you a report on heaven that I was there? No. How can you say there is heaven? There is no afterlife. There's no reincarnation. That's the word I was looking for. There's no reincarnation. Forget about reincarnation. Just enjoy. And if you have to borrow to enjoy, borrow it. Who cares? The main thing is just maximize your day-to-day experience. It is called Charvaka. And there is not an orderly fashion, but let me just give you all of these. So in these 12 darshanas, we do classify them into 2 segments. One segment is called Nastika, and the other one is called Astika. Nastika and Astika. Nastika do not accept the validity of Vedas. Astikas say the Vedas are valid, but they still have a lot of objection to Vedanta. Those are the Astikas. We'll come to that in a minute. Let's look at the Nastikas. Nastikas, there are, so Charvakaha is the majority. Then there are some specific ones that do accept afterlife and so on. One of them is the Jainas. So Jains are, for example, and by the way, other than Charvakaha, the other ones accept the first 5 pramanas. Pratyaksha, Anumanam, Upamanam, etc. But not Shabda Jnana. They don't accept Shabda Jnana. So why don't they accept? Because there are valid examples. Oh, no, we don't need it. We don't need it. We can do everything by the first five. Okay? So everything that I'm talking about, very few people accept the Shabda Jnanam as a valid pramana, surprisingly. Anyway, so the second one is Jainas. So I won't spend into a lot of time on that. So the Jains are the ones who feel there are multiple Atmas. Every Atma is slightly different. And even if you take a new birth, you maintain your own Atma. And how it merges and what happens and so on, I don't know. But anyway, these are the Jains. Then comes the Buddhists, Bauddha. In Bauddha, there are 4 different segments called Sautrantrikaha, Vaibhashikaha, Yogacharaha and Madhyamikaha. They have some differences between them. They fight between themselves. But they also don't accept the Vedic Pramana. Even though Buddha was born in the times of Vedas, but he feels that I've figured it out on my own without any Vedas, and you don't need the Vedas. You don't need the Vedas. You can just do it on your own. And there are modern people who also feel the same way. J. Krishnamurti is a very good example of that. He says, don't study the Vedas or anything. You can figure it out on your own. Anyway, so it's a kind of a modern form of Buddhism, if you may. So the Buddhists have 4 different darshanas, which I won't go into today. So these are 6 altogether. Charvakaha, Jainaha, Bauddhaha, 4 of Bauddhas. These are 6. Then we come to the Astika. So these were Nastikaha. Then we come to the Astikaha. In Astikaha, it's a very interesting segmentation. So remember the definition of Astikaha, which I gave a little while ago, which is Astikas are the ones who accept the validity of Vedas. Okay? Now, if they accept the validity of Vedas, doesn't mean they accept Ishvara. In fact, when I was growing up, the definition of Nastika was different. In Hindi, we will say, "Wo to Nastik hai." Nastik means that he doesn't believe in God. The Nastik hai. But in technical parlance, Nastika is not the belief of Ishvara, but the belief of validity of Vedas. So all these 6 ones that I'm going to mention now believe in the validity of Vedas, but not necessarily that of Ishvara. And I'll point out which ones it is. So the first one is Sankhya. Sankhya. And the Sankhyas also do not believe in Ishvara. So all these, by the way, were all started by human beings. So Sankhyas were started by Kapilaha. And he came up with the idea that really there are 2 competing things. One is Atma and the other one is Prakriti. Pradhanam. And Pradhanam is also very important. And you have to keep Pradhanam very happy. They are independent. If you do that, if you do have Samyam, if you have Samata, if you have a coherence between all the Sattva Guna, all the so on, then the Atma just emerges on its own. So this is the Sankhya view. Then there is the Yogacharya by Patanjali. So the difference between Yogacharya and Sankhya is that the Yogas do believe in God. But they also have some funny notions about Prakriti and Maya and so on and so forth, which we will hopefully will examine as we go along. And so this is the yoga system, it's yoga darshana. And by the way, in the 6 astikas, there is a classification of 2, 2, 2. And so the Sankhya and Yoga are kind of like two cousins. One believe in God and one they don't believe in God. Then the next two are called Naiyayikaha or Nyayaha and Vaisheshikaha. So here Nyaya was proposed by Gautama and Vaisheshikas are proposed by Kanada. Again, the difference is that in Nyaya, Ishvara is accepted, and in Vaisheshikas, Ishvara is not accepted. But they are both similar to each other. And I would say that the modern way of looking at it is to look at them as science. Analytical and science. You analyze based on your own understanding and you prove validity by whether it can be repeated or not. So these are two cousins of the middle one. And here what we say is that this is not valid because the very person who is doing the analysis is not valid. We'll come to that later on, but for now, just to see that, for example, supposing you are dreaming. Supposing you're dreaming. And you are a dream character and you are arguing. You know, there is no truth in this life. Everybody is on his own. I think we should just enjoy life, and where are we going to go? And other people in the dream, this is all in the dream. Other people in the dream will say, no, you know, there is some religious things you should... Oh, religious thing, what are you talking about? This is the argument. And in fact, the dream character that you are, I'm talking about us as a dream character, may be very sharp, very intelligent, and can argue through all of this and so on. So we say the argument, forget about whether the arguments of the Naiyayikas and Vaisheshikas are true or not. Forget whether the arguments are true or not. They themselves are not true. It's like if the dream character is arguing, the dream character is a false one. So how can the arguments not be false? Anyway, that's the line of thinking that we will see later on. And so that's the second set of two. Then comes the people who not only believe in the validity of Vedas, but really spend a lot of time analyzing it and understanding it and espousing it. So these two are also cousins in that manner. And so the one of them is what is called Purva Mimamsa, whose proponent is Jaimini. So this is the karma part of Vedas. And can you believe it? The Purva Mimamsa do not admit of Ishvara. It's a complete surprise. The karma Kanda means a section of the Vedas which is all based on karmas, and this is the Purva Mimamsa. It does not accept of Ishvara. Why not? Because it feels that karma alone is influencing your life. Ishvara has nothing to do with it. And so basically, if you've done good karmas, you'll have a good future. If you have a bad karma, which is true. But there is an important thing here, that the karmas are not independent. Karmas are simply actions that have to be blessed by Ishvara. So until the blessing of Ishvara comes in, and the Ishvara's blessing doesn't have to completely conform to karma. Can be just be even beyond that. We will go into that all that some other time. Anyway, so the karma is the main and the only factor in the Purva Mimamsa. So Jaimini is the proponent of that. And then comes Vedanta, which is called Uttara Mimamsa, which is the Vyasacharya. So Vyasacharya is not the originator of Vedanta, as you know. We've already talked about it. He simply explains Ishvara's view of what the whole creation is all about. And so he is born into the... He's not starting a religious or spiritual path. All the others ones are starting the spiritual path. Before that there was nothing. They're saying, I am the one that figured it all out. Not in Vedanta. Sanatana Dharma means has always been there. As we have discussed it, like in the discussion of Akasha, that when you are capable of picking up the waves of Ishvara's talks, Ishvara's thinking, then you can interpret it. And the Vyasacharya is an interpreter, not an originator. So that is the Uttara Mimamsa. And there, of course, Ishvara is accepted. Ishvara is the whole thing, really. In the end, in the beginning, you have both the ahankara, which is the jiva, and in the beginning. So here's how it happens. I'll finish with this. So in the beginning, you only have jiva. So in the case of Charvakas and so on, I don't see Ishvara anywhere around. I only see me. In fact, we're going to discuss this Tasmin Drishte Paravare Chidyante Hridaya Granthi in the Drikdashya Viveka in the next class, this very topic. So in the beginning there is only Jiva, Ahankara, there is no Ishvara. Then you study and you find there are two people. There is Ahankara and there is an Ishvara. And first you doubt it, but the more you study it, you admit to it and say, yes, there are two people. Then the third stage is that the Ahankara disappears. Only Ishvara remains. Only Brahman remains. That is what we should be aspiring to. And that means that the dream character who is arguing this, that or the other, itself disappears and becomes the waker. It was always the waker, but for the time being it was covered up by being a dreamer. So this is how it progresses in Vedanta. So let's already a little bit over time. So let's chant the remaining verses of Dakshinamurti and then a few shlokas, and then we'll be open for questions. Rahu grasta divankarendu sadrisho maya samachadinat sanmatra karanopasamharnato yo bhut sushuptaf puman pragaswap samiti prabodha samaye yav pratyabhigyayate tasmai shri guru murtaye namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Balyadishu api jagradadishu tatha sarvasvavasthasvapi vyavrittasvanuvartamanam ahamityanta spurantam sada Swatmanam prakatikaroti bhajatam yo mudraya bhadraya tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Vishwam Pashyati Karyakaranataya Swaswami Sambandhataha Shishyacharya Tathaiva Pitruputratyatmana Bhedataha Swapne Jagrati Vaya Esha Purusho Maya Paribhramitaha Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Bhurambhamsya Nalo Nilo Ambar Maharnartho Himamshuv Puman Ityabhati Chara Charatmakamidam Yasyaiva Murtyashtakam Nanyat Kinchana Vidyate Vimrishatam Yasmat Parasmat Vibho Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Sarvatmatvamiti Sputikritamidam Yasmatamushminstave Tenasya Shravanat Tadattamananat Dhyanat Cha Sankirtana Sarvatmatvamaha Vibhuti Sahitam Syadishwaratvam Swataha Siddhyetat Punarashtadha Parinatam Chaishwaryam Avyahatam Ashubhani Nirachaste Tanoti Shubhasantatim Smriti Matrena Yatpumsam Brahmatan Mangalam Param Ati Kalyana Rupatvat Nitya Kalyana Samshrayat Smartranam Varadatvat Cha Brahmatan Mangalam Viduhu Omkaraschatha Shabdascha Dvau Vetau Brahmanah Pura Kantham Bhitva Viniryatau Tasman Mangilikau Vubhau Om Atha Om Atha Om Atha. All right. So let me just do it in sequence. Punita, that Zoom might be an option to bring it closer to. I think that in general what we are doing is correct. There will be too many people in the Zoom and may not really work out. what I am thinking of, excuse me, and I've already talked to Raj Paripatyadar, who's really arranging the whole thing for me, is that maybe once in a while we will have a Zoom session for satsang. So instead of having every class on Zoom, we will have some classes in Zoom. So we will do that. It's a good idea. Then Darshana had question, even non-believers first have to understand what they are not believing in. Right? So the way I would understand this question, Darshana, is that yeah, that's exactly, I think you stated it well, that if someone says, I don't believe in God, you have to ask them, what kind of God do you not believe in? And so if they sketch out a good description of the God that they don't believe in, you can agree with them and say, that kind of God even I don't believe in. So in that sense, yes, I think what you're saying is correct. That if for example, in a way this is saying that if you say that there is no pencil here on this table, you must have known what a pencil is. So if you say there is no pencil, you belie the fact that you know what a pencil is and you know it is not there. So something like that. I agree with that. Raj Velpuri says that if there are people who achieve self-realization under each of these darshanas, if so, they all reach the same place eventually, and should that not change the original belief system? And should that not change their original belief system? Let me understand. If so, they all reach the same place. Oh, that we should change the belief system. I think I understand now. So, Raj, who has reached self-realization and who has not? It's not easy to tell. Because people can say, they can believe in whatever they want to believe in. But that proof, you have to really taste it yourself. And it is so these other belief systems would not be challenged by the acharyas in the Advaita Sampradaya, which is what Vedanta is, if there was an understanding that something else could be done. We would change our view, but we don't. What it indirectly shows is that people can say what they want to, but it cannot be done. Cannot be done. It's not, it is something which is all, they can come close to it. They can feel meditation through samadhi that you are, but to become a sense of freedom without any body, when you dispose of it and there is no death for a person while alive, we don't see others having that experience. And if they say they do, we look at it suspiciously. This is what our acharyas are saying, and they also back it up by saying it's not possible. You cannot, I think the easiest one to argue on this is that you can never reach infinity. Never. You can be a very large number, but you can never reach infinity. And you want to reach infinity. So the only choice is whether you are already infinity and not know that. And if that's what you're saying, then you are a Vedantin. Why do you have to start another religion? And if that's what you're saying, bless you. Wonderful, wonderful. But you can never say that I achieved really the freedom. I was already achieved. I was already free, and I didn't realize it. I think I have to give you this very simple, rather simplified example of my friend who thought he had lost his passport. Sorry, not password. Passport is everywhere these days. Passport. And what was interesting to me was that here's this very important person who was so self-assured. How he broke down. He started kind of like sobbing. And once he found the passport, you know, this is the thing. This is the thing to understand in the response to this question. Once he found the passport, it wasn't as though he was proud, you know. I found the passport. I'm so smart. He started giggling and feeling sorry that he bothered me. And he said, oh, sorry. I said, it's okay. It happens to everybody. It happens to me also. What's the big deal? And I remember this one satsang that happened where somebody asked Swami Dayanandji, Swamiji, how does it feel? We give several different examples of that. One of them, he says that you feel utterly relaxed. And if you follow the teachings of Swami Paramarthananda also, what you will find is that Jivan Mukti progressively comes when your sense of concern and fear and so on slowly goes away. Anxiety, you have a complete lack of anxiety. For anything you are doing, you're not anxious anymore. You're already full. And when it comes, so for us, for the daily person, the anxiety comes and goes. For a while it disappears, then it comes back again, And so the progression of this would be where there is no reason for any anxiety, period. What will happen to me? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my wife? What about children? Nothing. No anxiety. And so, what Swami Dayanandji used to say was, there is no anxiety, completely relaxation. And the second thing he said was, similar to what my friend who found the passport was, that you find yourself somewhat sheepishly foolish. There's not a sense of accomplishment. You feel sheepishly foolish, my God. Why did I bother myself so much? And I bother others. There's no reason to it. I'm sorry. I should have known this all along. Anyway, so that's something like that. We can discuss it some other. There was another question. Just a second. Yeah, Gajananam, this is a very good point that you're bringing, and it's not easy to see the difference. We all had the same question, which is, Gajananam's question is, how is Arthapatti any different from Anumanam? Why isn't it the conclusion that it rained last night considered as Anumanam? So, the difference is, what Swami Dayanandji used to say, that we all struggle with this one very well. Anumanam is a single level inference. Arthapatti is a multi-level Anumanam. Multi-level. And so the classical example given in the Arthapatti is, I just gave you Swami Paramarthananda's recent example of the raining. But the classical example is that of a of a temple priest who is overweight, highly overweight. And he claims that he is on fast almost the whole day. He doesn't eat much. So now there is something wrong in this picture. You cannot be overweight until you are very fond of eating, or you eat a lot. Forget about fond. And indeed the person is truthful that from morning to evening when you visit the temple, he is so busy in his prayers that he never eats anything. It's true. Now, so the inference could be that, I don't know how that could be. But here the inference is that there is some data which is completely belying the truth. So you have to presume. So arthapatti means presumption. Means presumption. It is not inference, it is presumption. The presumption is this fellow must go home at 9 o'clock and has a huge meal every day. Huge meal. That's all I can say. I don't know what else to say because really nobody has seen him eating. That's what arthapatti is. So Swamiji Dayanand used to also say that arthapatti is multi-level inference. Inference after inference after inference after inference. And there's some other examples that he gave. I'll go over that in some other time. Sujit Dikshit. Vedanta also says that Atma is a Swayam Siddha. So if somebody like JK there are to stay away from Vedanta and teach something like the Vedantic, is it Vedanta? So Sujit, the only thing I would say is that one of the, and I'm not sure that I used to study J. Krishnamurti at one time until Swami Dayanandji had pointed out the flaws in his arguments and so on. So this is J. Krishnamurti believes in you can figure it out on your own. You don't need a guru. This is not true. You cannot figure it out after a while because it is not possible, and we'll go into that. So that is one of the main reasons why Krishnamurti should not be resorted to. Okay. Raj says, no, I'm not saying to a new religion to start, but how to choose the right path. In one of your earlier classes, you said Brahma Sutra is to question others' approaches. Let me understand this. I'm not sure that I'm not saying that a new religion to start, but how to choose the right path. In one of your earlier classes, you said Brahma Sutra is to question others' approaches. Yeah, we're still saying it. We're still saying it, that the Brahma Sutra is to systematically go through the defense of Vedanta and the defects of others. That's what Acharya is going to do for us. So whether you consider it as a new religion or not, so this is actually a subtle subject where you have to get the spiritual Supreme Court to give me all the subtle arguments which support my own understanding. That's what it is. So either I completely do not understand your question, or we will continue to discuss it, or you can even send me an email. Punita, infinity can be reached through infinite paths, hence different darshanas. So Punita, infinity cannot be reached. Can never be reached. So even that premise, the very first premise is wrong, that the infinity can be reached. Because infinity, that means if you try to reach infinity, you are not infinity at one time. No, not possible. So infinity is already there, but we just don't see the infinity of it. That's all. So there is no different paths, not infinite paths to infinity. That premise itself is wrong. This is what we are saying. Okay, I think I'm getting late to get ready for the next class to have a small break. So I'm happy that we had a discussion, and I think I need to learn to finish my classes a little bit earlier. I usually get carried off to not until 9:15, so I'll try to do that so there is more time left for discussion, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. Om.